Hello out there, my name is Milesy and welcome to my channel. Today I have got an H&B pencil set. I have another one of their sets that I really like, and I saw this one and noticed that it had some different things, so I wanted to check it out. And they come in these really nice heavy cases that I really like. Let's fold it open. So we've got 16 sheets of sketch paper that it comes with, and all of these different types of pencils. So over here we have got some charcoal pencils. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 charcoal pencils. We have a pen, which the other one did not come with. I'm not sure if it says that it's permanent waterproof ink, so we'll take a look at that. We've got an extender, so this is for when your pencils get too small. You put them in here and it just makes them a little bit easier to hold on to. We have 3 of these blending sticks. I've got more of these than I'll probably ever use now. We've got a double-ended sharpener for this one. The other set that I have only has the small one, so we've got one with 2 sizes. We have one of the vinyl erasers. I really like the eraser that came in the other set. They're pretty decent. We have this. So this is for sharpening your blending sticks. Underneath is some really rough sandpaper. That's what that does. These are hard to get back into where they belong. And I just dropped my phone. And then this surprised me. We have kind of a scary looking utility knife. So I guess now I've got a knife that lives back here to open up packages I have a hard time with. We have a paintbrush with this one. It's just a little size 1. And it feels kind of like it's got something on it. Probably needs to be washed. And then this was what kind of really caught my attention. So we have the graphite pencils over here, which are just pretty typical graphite pencils. This set goes from 5H to 8B, which just means that these ones are a little bit harder. The B ones are a little bit softer. I like to use the H ones for when I'm using my light board. Then we have, these are the ones that really caught my attention. We have a set of watercolor pencils. I don't use these super often, but we'll see how they go. We have a set of regular colored pencils, and the set that I have from H&B, the other set that I have, is just all of the colored pencils, but they look a little bit different than the other ones. I think the ones that came in the other set are actually a different brand, so we'll see. And then we have some metallic pencils, which could be very interesting. So let's go ahead and swatch these and see how they all behave. So apparently I didn't make any commentary on this set while I was swatching it, but I was really pleased with pretty much everything in it. I don't use a whole lot of charcoal, but I do plan on doing at least one video where I try it, so I don't have much of an opinion on that. As for the colored pencils themselves, they've all got fairly hard leads, which I really like. I prefer a harder lead to a softer lead, and I've talked about it before, but basically the harder your pencil is, the easier it is to layer up. The metallic ones aren't super metallic. They have a little bit of a shimmer to them, but not a lot. Really what sets them off, though, is that they're these really nice, kind of almost desaturated, bolder colors, and I really liked that a lot with those. The basic colored pencils, pretty basic. They layer pretty well together. They blend pretty well together. They're nice and hard, so they're pretty easy to use. And then the watercolor pencils. I don't use a lot of watercolor pencils. I don't really know how they're meant to be used, if there's any specific one way they should be used, but they color really well. They activate really well on the paper, and this was sketch paper, so it wasn't the best. Also, the brush that came with it was really messed up, so probably not using that brush. But it all reactivated really well on the page. The graphite pencils are graphite pencils, and I had a lot of really high hopes for this, even if I'm probably never going to use the sketch pad that came with it. So this piece was live streamed, and I know the quality isn't super awesome. I'm using this new camera that I have. It can be used standalone. It's supposed to be used standalone, but it can also be used as a hardlined webcam, but for some reason it only records in 720 when I do it that way, so it doesn't have the best quality. That said, it's a lot easier to do it this way, so I'm still kind of trying to decide which way I want to do these recordings. Anyway, I had a pretty good idea for what I wanted to do that would use all of the different types of pencils in this kit. I didn't use the charcoal, I just used the colored pencils. The regular ones, the metallic ones, and the watercolor ones. And as I was drawing this character, I realized I'd been doing a lot of just kind of generic foxes, and I wanted to actually draw another one of my own characters. So it became Buster, which is the pet dog of the main character in Little Beirut. He is kind of following Mickey Mouse rules, I think, is the easiest way to explain it. So Buster is a regular dog. He is not an anthro dog, and he just kind of exists in this universe as Will's pet. So I was trying to get his head shape, which was really difficult, and also this is an intensely difficult angle for me, this kind of looking up, camera facing down from below. I always wind up not being able to do this kind of the area around the bridge of the nose or the snout, whatever you want to call it, where the eyes are. I can never get those right, and I always wind up having the snout area being a little bit four-dimensional, where you can kind of see both the top and the bottom at the same time, and I was trying real hard to avoid that. This is one of my extremely troublesome angles, and there were more than one time where I just wanted to be able to take the whole thing and, like I were using it digitally, and just cut out part of it and move it around, but you can't do that. And then I ran into this problem, which I realized after the fact was not as much of a problem as I thought it was. But I had drawn it landscape because I ran out of room, and then when I drew it landscape, what wound up happening was it wouldn't fit in the sketchbook. And then I accidentally put it too far over into the margin anyway, so then it just became really difficult to scan. But I cut out the part where I was doing the light board stuff. That area never really works very well. But the new camera setup that I have, I've switched some things around. My side camera is now the camera that I've been using, because that actually does have the ability to focus, and it has a better depth of field, basically, so I decided to switch them around. And I thought for this that what I wanted to do was use the colored pencils, the watercolor ones, as regular colored pencils. So I colored down the local color first. And there's only, I think, 12 colors of each one, so I had to kind of do a lot of layering to get the colors that I want, because he's kind of a red, rust-colored dog, so I wound up layering a bunch of colors, and then there was no kind of white or gray, I noticed, so that made it really difficult to do his white patches, but I came upon something quite by accident that actually wound up working really well, because I wanted to try using them as straight up colored pencils. Color them down and then put the water on top, and you'll see that in a little bit, and I really love how it turned out. But for pretty much every single color on this dog, I wound up having to layer over it with brown and then kind of do a couple of different layers with it, because they're all very bright colors, and none of them, there's no earthy tones, there's no really desaturated tones, which is why I really liked the metallic ones. The metallic ones have a lot of really nice tones, but you can see just how nicely and how evenly these pencils reactivate once you get them wet. And I'm using a sketchbook. This is a sketchbook piece, so I had to be very careful about the amount of water that I put down, because this paper can't really handle a whole lot. I wanted to do the background graphic with these watercolor pencils as well, but pretty quickly realized that wasn't going to happen. And then for the shading, I wanted to try a slightly different technique, which did not work at all, but we managed to fix it in the end. I was dipping the pencil into water and kind of trying to use that for the shading, which almost worked, but at the same time really, really did not. And I didn't notice that I kept smudging it everywhere until later. So I noticed that the color was just entirely too intense doing it that way, so I wound up using a lot of water, a lot more water than the page could really handle, so it made it hard to scan later from it being all warped and weird. And I just feathered out that purple as much as I could, which wound up looking really nice in the end. Right now it just looks like a purple nightmare, but it blended really well with the colors that are underneath, and then the next layer that I put over it blended really well with the purple. So we'll get to that in a little bit too, but right now he's just kind of looking a little scary, and it was kind of one of those moments where I decided I'm going to go work on some other element of it, because I'm afraid that I will ruin it if I keep picking at it. So I was really letting that purple dry before I did anything. And I wanted to use the metallics a lot more than I did as well. Initially, there were a whole bunch of butterflies around, but it felt like it was really distracting. So I cut it down to one butterfly, which meant the metallics really didn't get represented too much, but they did work out really well. I really liked how the butterfly has this very different look to the dog, and then the background has this really sketchy look that I wanted to do watercolor with initially, but like I said, this paper just was not going to be able to handle it, so I had to do it this way. And this was really tricky because it's this giant void space circle, so trying to keep this sketchiness uniform across the entire thing really was not working. If I were able to move the sketchbook and rotate it around, that would have been a lot easier, and I kind of tried to. I tend to avoid that, though, for two reasons. I know it doesn't look very good for you guys when the page that I'm drawing on keeps rotating every single direction possible. And also, there's just no room. This sketchbook is a solid square foot just about. It's enormous. It's huge. So it doesn't really work to have in a small area like I have it in. I wish my area were bigger, but this is all I've got. But I Had to be very careful with the background circle as well. I tried to avoid not overworking that, like I had kind of overworked the dog, but it wound up pretty decent. I mean, as decent as something like that could really wind up. And by that point, the purple had dried, so I grabbed some brown colored pencils, and I started coloring over the purple. And these weren't the watercolor pencils, these are just the regular pencils. And I started coloring over it, and I realized that it was creating this really nice, fluffy, almost feathery look. Very soft, and it really helped offset that purple so much. So I was really pleased with this. And this is where I think it got a lot of its depth and a lot of its character. I really love how the whole thing turned out. The browns and the purple really came together nicely. I think I used 2 different shades of brown to do the shading on him, just depending on where on the piece I was. And I was able to kind of draw that purple out without making the whole thing purple. And there's a little bit of color theory in here. I think I've mentioned before that I always like to do my shading in usually some kind of a blue, a brown, or a green, depending on what the base colors are. And since this guy's very red, I wanted to do the shading in purple to kind of offset that. Another thing I've been really working on trying to do, and I know I'm kind of off screen here a little bit, is I've been trying so hard to get comfortable with my markers again, and I've definitely found that the easier way to do it for me is to leave them at the end, which seems really weird, but I find that I have more for my hand to trace. I've got more visual cues for what I should be doing, and I was completely off frame here, but I wasn't really looking. Oh well. You'll see more in a little bit. And I made a couple of mistakes because I wasn't paying too much attention to my original line art. I kind of messed up his ear, and I messed up on his neck in ways that really don't matter. They're completely inconsequential. Nobody's ever going to notice. I can't believe how far off frame I was last night. But it's one of those things where as soon as I noticed that I'd done it, I was really upset with myself because it made it just a little bit off, and it didn't quite get the look that I was going for. But I don't think either of those places where I messed up, anyone can tell. They're just lines that kind of overlapped in the wrong way, is I think the best way to put it. But this was where the piece really came together. I'm using a 1mm and a 0.5mm Copic multi-liner, fine liner, whatever they call them. I've got some microns, and I kind of want to try those as well, but I think the Copics, they've got a more rough nib, and I really like that. It makes it a little bit easier for me to keep the friction and the resistance that I need. I don't like a pen that will slide everywhere. I really want my pen to resist me a little bit. It helps me keep a little bit more control. But just trying to vary up the line weights as much as I could, I think really brought this piece to life. Having some of the lines a lot thicker, some of them a lot thinner, and getting used to doing that with just the 2 pens has been making my line art process go so much faster. If you've seen the ones where I was using the pencil, that was typically taking up like half of the time that I spent drawing, which now it's about a 10-20 minute process depending on the size of it. So it's going a lot faster, and I like it a lot more. I think my next challenge, once I really get comfortable with this, is to get better at inking first and then doing the color last, because it does get really confusing and it's really easy to screw up. But this is Buster. He was a lot of fun. You can read about him in Little Beirut. I will leave you here to watch the rest of it, however much there may be, and I will leave an affiliate link down below for you to check out this pencil set if you want to. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, all that fun stuff, and I will see you next time. Bye!